I'm Vinay, and I designed this thing called a Hex here in 2002, started a project, lots and lots of people came along and helped me design it. This graphic was absolutely done by my friend Razi, who's sitting right here. And this thing is basically a way of turning whole sheets of plywood into 13 or 15 different structures from a couple of square meters all the way up to nearly 500 square feet, 50 square meters. Nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but I want to put this into context. And this thing is used at Burning Man, hundreds and hundreds of units. They build them every year inside of the garden in the middle of the Pentagon. Red Cross has done them. You know, it's a practical engineering thing that's open source and making a substantial difference in the world. So I'm going to talk about where this really came from, which is a very different kind of reality. Could we kill the, or just bring up a blank slide? Just a blank slide.
Do you want me to kill it completely?
No, I've got a blank slide. Just any flat white image.
Flat white. There's a blank slide. There's a blank slide in my.
Yeah, your blank slide.
In my slide, there's a blank slide.
Right. So was anybody here yesterday?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
No, an actual white thing. So yesterday there was lots and lots of talk about meditation, and most of the talk about meditation, any white object, find something weird. So there was a lot of talk about meditation and how it was great for people in prisons and how it would improve your mood and various other things along these kind of lines. What I'm going to talk about is what meditation does if you do really a lot of it. Like, really
Quick!
Please. Yeah. Perfect, good. Well, there is a reason for having a blank slide, I'm sure we'll get to it. So, how much meditation is a lot of meditation? Typically, to get enlightened takes about as much work as getting a PhD. So, you would expect it to be the dominant occupation of your life for something between 7 and 10 years. Including working your ass off for your A-levels, getting through an undergraduate degree, doing a master's, doing a PhD. Getting enlightened is about a PhD's worth of work. Very few people in the West claim to be enlightened, even fewer of the people who claim to be enlightened are enlightened, and even fewer of them are doing anything other than teaching. So I'm the rare class of individual where I got enlightened, I'm actually fucking enlightened, and I don't teach. And I don't teach because my teacher said I was just not very nice. So instead of teaching enlightenment, I went to war. I went and mounted a massive charge against the world's militaries to teach them that Buckminster Fuller was God and the hippies were right about everything, making substantial impact on their thinking. Because, you know, there are many more things you can do with enlightenment than just sit on your ass teaching other people how to wind up in the same mess that you're in. Quietly raise your hands, you don't actually have to stick your hand in there, if you have done massive psychedelic drugs at some point in your career. Yeah, good. So imagine being stuck on the peak of a trip for about 15 years. Fuck off. It's not that much fun. So I'm going to briefly tell the story, and then I'm going to talk about what spiritual practice means in the 21st century. So, I grew up in hell. Both of my parents were mentally ill, I was sexually abused, all manner of evil and mayhem that could possibly occur did. People with my kind of family history typically don't live until 30 and spend most of their life on massive drugs. So, about 15, I started to meditate. About an hour a day, sometimes 2. I was physically ill at the time, I had nothing but free time. And although I'm half Indian, I had no real exposure to Hinduism as a tradition. I just started to meditate because there was nothing else to do and it seemed hell. After 6 years of an hour or something a day, after a very intense, shall we say, collaborative celebration, in the morning, after the trip, we were having a kind of debriefing session. In my head, as we were talking, I saw an amplifier, just a very simple aluminum amplifier with a big knob with a little blue LED on it. And I saw my hand reach down and turn the knob off. And my internal dialogue completely stopped. This is about 1993, 1994, and never came back. So living in the condition of having no internal dialogue, no flow of thoughts, no flow of images, just smack into the present, is quite an abrupt thing. And for the first 2 weeks I thought I'd gone completely mad. Oh my god, I've totally broken myself. I'm fucked. And I discovered I could still go to work, and I could still socialise with people, and I could, cook and get through all the basic things of life. And nobody outside of me seemed to notice any particular change in my behaviour, even though I was lost in this rapturous state of total absorption of the world. Wow, this is amazing. Whoa. And then life continued. And I'd run right off the edge of every reality map that I had. Because if you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and say, by the way, I did really a lot of meditation and my internal dialogue has totally stopped. Any ideas what I do now? Nobody ever winds up there in the West because nobody does enough bloody meditation. Because they don't do it right. So I went off, I read a book called the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, and in it, there was a big map of mental states. Huge, huge, huge map. And I was about a third of the way forward. So like, okay, these guys know what they're doing. I'm going to go off and find somebody who understands the rest of this. This is yoga. So I found a guru, and after about 3 years being repetitively kicked in the head by the woman that the Oracle in the Matrix was based on, really existed. Used to live in Chicago. She lived in a New Age bookstore where one of the wives of the Wachowski brothers worked. And all that kind of nice, soft maternal stuff the Oracle does, none of that was true. The only part that was true was the repetitive kicking in the head. You get it? Yeah, kid. Wow! Right? But eventually what happened is, I woke up. Boom! Right? Understood the nature of space and time, the unity of consciousness and matter, the true age of consciousness, and the gurus, and all of the rest of the mystical shit that people talk about. All of which is true, none of which is remotely helpful. For reasons I will explain. So, once you wind up there, you look back, everything else looks completely normal. Right? Trees are trees, grass is grass, people are people. Yeah, they're all cosmic manifestations of the one, original brain of the universe and all the rest of that crap. But that was true before you noticed it. Right? Enlightenment is a change of perspective. You go from not understanding what is happening to understanding what is happening. Once you understand what is happening, it does not change what is going on. Right? All the time that we thought we understood where animals came from before we discovered evolution, we were wrong. That didn't mean the animals weren't evolving, it just meant we didn't understand what the hell was happening. So it is with enlightenment. You finally understand the nature of consciousness. Consciousness proceeds to do what consciousness always did. Right? For example, right? Here is a shadow. Right? Now, once you understand that if you look closely enough, what you're seeing here are pixels, and over there's a really bright light that's going through some set of digital mirrors, and that's what the pixels are. There's still a shadow. Right? You stop being mystified by why there's a shadow. There, yeah, there's a hand, there's a shadow. That's what the shape is. But it doesn't change what it is and where it came from. So the whole process of meditation is sitting and watching what is. And you sit and you watch what is until you finally notice what's actually going on. You work your way down through layer after layer after layer after layer of mental noise and nonsense and mythology and all the rest of this stuff. And eventually you bottom out into consciousness itself. And consciousness itself is just consciousness. Right? The Indians talk about Sat Chit Ananda, knowledge being bliss. They're just trying to describe what happens when you take the light inside of you that in some sense creates your world, and you turn it around and you point it at itself. Once you can finally put your awareness on awareness, you get a feedback that opens the universe to you. And that's why you meditate. Right? The form of meditation which is kind of taking root in this culture is like the form of yoga which is taking root in this culture. Yoga is not a way to look hot. Right? I understand that many people are using it for that. Right? It's one of 8 aspects of yoga. Right? There are 8 legs of yoga. All the physical postures are one of the legs. And it's meant to make your body stable enough so that you can sit in one position for an hour and a half at a time meditating without getting distracted by muscle cramps. That's what yoga's for. It's so you can sit and bloody meditate. That's why it was invented. Also, potentially, if you do it right, you become physically immortal. Google The Alchemical Body if you're interested in that stuff. It's a very good book. Personally, I think that's probably mythology. Well, I have heard some stories firsthand. So, does this make sense so far? Okay, good. How are we doing for time?
Just keep going.
Just keep going. Right. So, the second thing that comes from this is that all of these heavy spiritual practices, whether it's prayer or meditation, magic just radiates off this stuff, right? Every tradition that has enlightened people has stories of wizards, right? You know, the Taoists who run across water, you know, all this crouching tiger, hidden dragon stuff. The European alchemists. Do you guys know about a guy called John Dee?
Of course.
Right? Of course. What kind of audience do you think this is? So John Dee, for those who are not overly read, was Queen Elizabeth I's court magician. And John Dee has one essential claim to fame, which is that he invented the concept of the British Empire. He wrote 2 books, the British Empire. He wrote 2 books arguing that as the Romans had used roads to create a trade network and to move armies around their empire, Britain could use ports and ships. So he invented the concept that we could re-implement what the Romans had done, but with London at the centre. Right? John Dee's primary work, what he was proudest of in his life, was a 400-page volume of angelic magic called the Enochian Magical System. So you sort of look at this and you're like, guy's smoking crack. Right? Then you look at Isaac Newton, right? You know, Newton's laws of motion, colours, he named the colours of the rainbow, right? By the way, he named the colours of the rainbow with 7 colours, even though indigo and violet are the same colour. Because he needed 1 colour per planet and 1 colour per alchemical force. 3/4 of Newton's work was alchemy. And that's all the stuff where everybody goes, oh, Isaac Newton, he was such a nonsense lover, all this alchemy stuff. Love the laws of motion, though. Because you're not allowed to take the other side of these men's work seriously, because if you do, oh my fucking god, that's really there? Oh shit. Yes, it's really there. Right? The weird thing is, everybody who opens up the big door and looks out into the magical universe where all the cosmic shit lives, sees something different. Right? The purpose of religions is to enforce conformity on the mythology that floods your brain once you open up the cosmic forces. So, if you are a strict Muslim, and you experience your enlightenment in the Muslim context, the sort of mystical model of the world that gets slammed into your head when you finally look at the universe in that way, will be in conformity with the dominant culture around you at the time. This is part of the reason that everything in Western culture went nuts when they discovered LSD, because you had all these people experiencing enlightenment outside of the conformity of the church. So rather than becoming, the Saint Ignatius of Loyola, right, you wound up as, acid-crazed Bill. Oh, I've got this mythology of the universe, and it's all to do with spiral dynamics. My name is Ken Wilber. Where the hell did that come from? He made it up and then told you it was cosmic law. Right? Just like all the others did. Right? Everybody experiences the mythological aspect of enlightenment on their own terms. And if they are a slick talker, they can convince you that's how it works. And then when you experience enlightenment, you experience the same mythology that you were loaded up with when you experience it. Right? This is how it really works. You've got your Buddhas and your Christs and your Mohammeds and your Abrahams and all the rest of these people. They experience these cosmic states of consciousness, they generate their own mythology, and then they run around telling you they've discovered the secrets of the universe and you should do it their way now. Right? This is why I don't teach. I don't teach because I'm an asshole. Right? I have a strong tendency to bite people unpredictably. Which is not surprising given what my personal history looks like. Right? You can't necessarily expect to get a perfectly smooth even curve if you start with something that looks like an anvil that was wrapped around a black hole. Right? Unmangling the human personality is a completely separate axis of activity from simply understanding the nature of stuff. Right? If you understand, that's the shape of a hand. If I had a finger missing, understanding the shape of a hand would not turn it back into the missing finger. Right? This is another part of the great mythology. The culture misunderstands enlightenment because the people who are selling enlightenment are shiny, happy, beautiful people. That's nothing to do with being enlightened. That's an absolute byproduct. In the same way that hatha yoga produces strong, fit people, enlightenment can produce a certain kind of glossiness. It's just not correlated. Right? And as you begin to rip these things apart and say, right, what is the fundamental knowledge about the nature of consciousness versus nature of the practices that produced it, versus the mythology that people realized when they opened to the cosmic world, versus the tradition that they were embedded in. When you begin to strip the abstract categories out, the thing that is called enlightenment is really, really pretty small. It doesn't mean it's easy, right? I mean, Schrodinger's wave equation you could write down on a string that's something like 35 characters, but the actual mechanics of consciousness, you go from looking out here at the phenomenal universe to looking at the mechanisms of consciousness itself. It forms a feedback loop, suddenly everything helps out, you understand the nature of raw consciousness. That's pretty much all there is to it. Everything else is containers and scaffolding, right? Building the instrumentation to keep your consciousness stable enough to be able to put the attention on the thing is about 3 or 4 years' work. It's like grinding the mirror if you're going to make an astronomical instrument. It takes years to grind a perfectly smooth reflector, then you silver coat it, then you point it at the sky, and now you can see the moons of Jupiter. Right? It takes you years to design the microscope. You'll look into the water, now you can see the microbes you just discovered germ theory. Building the instrumentation takes time. Years and years and years, because you need long periods, 35, 40 seconds minimally, when there are no thoughts in the mind, to be able to begin to turn the awareness onto itself. So lengthening the gap between thoughts means lowering the mental background noise. Lowering the mental background noise means going through all of the emotional layers and all of the attachments that generate thought. A single emotion that you don't really deal with properly can generate 5 years of internal chatter. Should I, shouldn't I, should I, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I, should I, should I, and you finally come back and it's this deep feeling of uncertainty about your place in the world. You feel it, it goes away, you've been liberated of an emotion, that stream of thought stops, and as a result your mind gradually empties, 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 and empties. Right? If you've been taught that you are your mind, that process feels like dying. This is why there's all this nonsense about the abyss and the master magic version. Oh, the abyss, oh, the abyss. You know, you go to India, they've never even heard of the abyss. Right? Because in India they don't think that you're your mind. So having the mind go away, really? That thing back there? Yeah, I used to use that for saying mantras, now it doesn't work anymore. Call tech support. Whereas in the West, if your mind stops, that means your identity is gone. And everybody freaks out and calls that the abyss. Right? If you shut the mind up in degrees and you understand the difference between yourself and your mind, your ideas, that layer can drop off without causing all that much distress. Right? Even for me, hitting that cold, 2 weeks of real mayhem. So, now we get to the fun part. Any questions? Yes.
Where can I sign up for your church?
It's the Church of the Hexier. You just go and build one.
Okay.
Stick to engineering. Yes.
I don't believe you.
Good.
Like I think what you're describing is like just getting rid of frameworks is just a new framework, right? You're just talking about another way of understanding consciousness, and it's the same as the Stoics, and it's the same as the mystics, and it's the same as Nietzsche, and it's the same as whoever you want to talk about. It's just another perspective. I think what you're. I mean, I'm sorry for being sceptical, but like what it seems to me that because you didn't talk about anything specific, right? You talked some beautiful abstraction, and maybe that's an artifact of what you're trying to get to is abstraction. So maybe that's a linguistic problem, but it feels to me like the things you're talking about in very abstract terms are the same things that every other philosopher, every other tradition ever talked about in abstract terms. It's just a different framework. You haven't got rid of framework.
Every individual who goes up there sees the same shit, more or less, and then you come back down and you try and tell people about it in language, and you wind up building a model that you use to communicate. That's exactly correct. Yes, it's the same shit.
I said what you said, but I made a joke out of
Yeah.
Because
So if that's the case, what's the insight? Like,
there is no particular insight. It's the same shit that everybody else says, right? The bit that's preferentially useful is being really, really, really clear that everybody comes back with their own version of the story, right? So, there's a Western notion that you get to some kind of hard objective truth and you get a perfect description which can be no further simplified, right? Think
I don't think that is true, actually.
Well, Pythagoras' theorem, right? However you state it, it's still Pythagoras' theorem. However you derive it, it's still Pythagoras' theorem. Proper mathematical truth is like that. So there's a deep desire in the Western mind to find that kind of certainty about consciousness. I'm not convinced it works that way. But, yeah.
I'm not convinced what the benefit of enlightenment is yet.
I'm not convinced there is one.
But you say you spend a lot of time refining your inner state of awareness to get to a certain point of truth.
Yes.
You presuppose that there is a certain truth to understanding that we all have. And yet, it seems to me what you're doing is stripping away all the interesting stuff that goes on in terms of an internal dialogue, and you get to a stage where you can recognise that a hand makes a shadow. Well, what's the benefit in that?
Precisely. Right? So in an Indian context, enlightenment is seen as something you might do sometime after the heat death of the universe, right? The traditional Hindu setting is that enlightenment is for a tiny fraction of people who've exhausted their karma and have really nothing else to do with their time. Right? It's a tiny minority sport. Then you get Buddhism, and Buddhism says, no, enlightenment for everybody. And it's this kind of evangelical enlightenment sect based on one guy that, as far as I could tell, totally missed the fucking point. Right? This Buddhist thing about all life is suffering, everything is fucked, everything is dukkha, everything is off-center, there's a fundamental wobbliness in the nature of things. He did it wrong. Buddhism is a mistake. That's the official Hindu viewpoint. Quote me on that. I'm absolutely clear about that, right? I could say that in an official capacity. To Hindus, the Buddha is the 6th incarnation of Vishnu, or maybe the 5th, one of those. And his job was to stop people getting enlightened by misleading them. Absolutely accurate from my perspective. The point is, it's not something that appeals to everybody. People shouldn't feel bad about getting on with their life and trying to be a good human being. Right? Not getting interested in enlightenment is like not getting interested in number theory or cosmology. If you're not into it, you're just not into it. It doesn't matter. Does that make sense? Is that a reasonable answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
What's your personal strategy for carrying on with material existence?
Absolutely shit at it. Right? I mean, nothing in my life really makes sense. My life is dominated by these chunks of narrative that were just conjured out of the void because I needed something to do. I never have any money apart from very occasionally there are these huge windfalls followed by long deserts of ridiculous. You'd be better asking almost anybody. Keep calm and carry on, right? Try not to get killed, etc., etc.
No, I ask this because it becomes something that's kind of like a positivistic nihilism, which I think I came through from doing acid 100 times. There's this question of materials and the world being full of materials and material relations and how you have a kind of nihilistic politics toward that's necessary to deal with them.
So, you get to a point, and this is widely talked about in like Philip K. Dick kind of stuff, where you've got to decide whether you're going to try and break out of the system, destroy the system so everybody is free, or just live with it. Right? And there are probably some other options as well, but those are your basic choices, right? Punch a hole for one person, smash the entire thing flat so everybody escapes, or just knuckle under and do what you're told. I think that you need a mixed strategy. Right? If you're dealing with parking, you should knuckle under and do what you're told. Right? Drive on the correct side of the road. Right? If you're dealing with your own personal mind, by be as free as you possibly can be. And in the kind of communal setting, if you see a whole bunch of people who are stuck in some awful negative rut because they don't know they're allowed to do something different, you can gently remind them and see if they buy it. I got an idea for the next board meeting. Why don't we sit around a whole bunch of little tables and talk about things kind of issue by issue, and then maybe talk to each other about it rather than sitting on a big table with a man with a gavel in it. Well, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. But I think it's something where you've got to think of it as a continuation of other parts of life, right? You know, you take your Nietzschean kind of will to power stuff. Boy, howdy, do you have to moderate that depending on your circumstances. You know, there is no absolute philosophy because we're in an adaptive environment populated by our equals, right? And once you understand that, you know, evolution is a real thing, the game is as hard as it can be because we've been extracting every possible advantage for the whole of our evolutionary history. Why would you expect Enlightenment to give you a massive edge?
Well, it's not about the edge because it's an arbitrary process.
Well, I mean, I'm not convinced it's arbitrary. Right? I'm pretty sure that it's a way of digging deeper into some fundamental reality. But that fundamental reality is not necessarily objective.
It's neutral.
It's also something where you've got no guarantee you saw it the first time around. Right? So when you think of, okay, I've got as good an understanding as anybody can have of this, but it's a 1x4x9 slab sitting on the surface of the moon. You know, how confident am I really understand everything about this thing, given that all the other people before me who said they were enlightened and understood everything, none of them discovered evolution? You know, you really have to look back at the history of Enlightenment. Everybody who failed to get evolution out of their Enlightenment trip, who didn't notice the origin of the body, what the fuck?
But maybe that's why Buddhists don't step on bugs.
I think we're going to take 2 more questions, and then there's going to be something exciting before we end, and then music. So I think it was David first, then Ben. And Baz, you're open as well.
Right.
David?
Drop questions?
Really quickly then, Vinay.
Yeah.
If one was to engage in the practice of spending long periods of one's time shutting out outside information from one's experience,
So the flotation tank style.
well, you know, you talked about the 45 seconds of thought where you're not thinking about anything else. So
Yeah.
after a few years, as you yourself mentioned, the math starts to add up and you spend more time thinking about the inside of your own mind than the outside. This moment of inversion you talked about where you see yourself thinking, isn't that just a kind of egocentric dialectical inevitability of your mind having more information about itself and the world in which to come to understanding?
Notably, most of the Enlightenment traditions use extremely low stimulus environments. You know, Zen monastic life, for example, is the same thing over and over and over and over again. You know, it's incredibly simple and incredibly repetitive to enable that interiorization. As for what actually happens at that point, you know, the discovery that the internal world is completely arbitrary and you can just turn it off dumps you right back into the external world in a very, very serious way. You know, once the internal dialogue stops, there's no place to escape to. And then you spend a bit more time sanding out through the bottom of that particular barrel until you hit the big one. And then after you hit the big one, slammed back into reality, but now the entire thing is this massive mystical cosmic process. But it's exactly the same shit it was before you noticed. You know, it's not. You see what I'm saying?
You say that you don't teach, so what is it about this time and the context of this event that you felt it was appropriate to share these things with this group of people?
So, when I say teach, what I mean is I don't form the guru-disciple relationship with people. Right? As a Hindu, we have this thing called the guru-disciple relationship. And the guru-disciple relationship starts out by creating a kind of surrogate parent. And the surrogate parent basically patches the remaining holes in the ego and holds the insecurity down to a dull roar, while the mind just dismantles itself. Don't worry, it's just like puberty, we're not going to let you make any stupid mistakes, try not to kill anybody, as you basically fry the entire surface of your consciousness off. I don't do that because if your own parents are evil bastards and your guru is a bit weird, you don't necessarily have great imprints or great templates to pass down to people. So, probably not qualified to be a strictly Hindu-style guru. But it's a fact, right? Not everybody who gets enlightened ought to teach. It's not necessarily the most pressing thing that needs to be done right now. Right? After 9/11, 9/11 is when they shut the school that I was part of, and it was just like, right, there's no point trying to teach another generation of Western gurus, go and do something about the state of the world. So, I picked housing. Right? 20 years from now, maybe 100 million people will live in those. Possibly, because they're a quarter of the price of a disaster relief tent. Bad. The pattern. Bad. So, here and now, right, we're in kind of one of these cycles where the world that we've lived in has gone away. Right? This economic process which is unfolding, there's no way of reversing it in America. There's probably no way of reversing it in the Mediterranean basin, including on the North African, Middle East side. It's eventually going to destabilize Israel. God only knows what's actually going to happen. But the period of sort of mild war that we've had 10 years of is about to turn into a proper economic depression. We haven't had one of those for several generations. And the last time we had one, we got the Nazis out the far side. This time we might get, civic anarchy because the nation state tears apart, the internet continues to basically function, and the whole thing goes completely bananas. In times like that, when the old world model is just snapping off, there's an enormous tendency to get the formation of stupid cults, right? And there's this kind of happy, clappy, pseudo-Buddhist millennialism stuff going around right now, of which the integral movement is one manifestation, but usually it's mushroom-toting hippies who've done a bunch of yoga, insist that you should be vegan, and that if everybody has the right consciousness, the world will be okay. That shit needs to just be killed with extreme prejudice, right? It's fucking nonsense. So, you guys are a particularly culturally powerful group of people. We've seen a fair amount of the kind of happy-clappy Enlightenment nonsense being preached. Oh yes, if you do a bit of meditation, everything is better. Yeah, that's absolutely true. What happens if you do more? Aha, right? And so this notion that, there's kind of an LD50 for meditation, after which you're going to have to face your cosmic existence, or you're going to have to become some chicken